The old water boy incident there. But let's move into the next one, which is about Rugby Australia. And it's apparently about to centralise the rugby model. So obviously we've been talking a lot recently about how Australia have clearly been adjusting a lot of aspects about Australian rugby. Because myself being Australian, I have a significant amount of complaints about this organisation, and I do have my question marks about this situation here. But it is a step in a positive direction in the sense that they are trying to change their ways from the last 2 decades of absolute nonsense, right? So I'm going to read out the article here from Fox Sports. And it says, Rugby Australia on the cusp of the biggest change since rugby went professional. In one of the most important moments in Australian rugby history, Rugby Australia is on the cusp of moving to a more centralised model. After years of being stalled by bureaucracy and political factions, the governing body has managed to convince the states of the necessity of becoming leaner and meaner. Rugby Australia will follow the lead of Irish Rugby Football Union and also New Zealand Rugby, who have for years operated under centralised programs. By doing so, duplication will become a thing of the past, and Rugby Australia will be involved in all of the appointments of head coaches, strength and conditioning coaches, player signings, as well as having greater control around sponsorship and finance. So also they're going to try and make sure that basically teams, it says member unions, but basically teams don't warehouse players, which is starving of a size of talent in key positions. So what that's referring to is teams signing players not so that they can play them, because they've already got the depth in those positions, they've already got the quality player in that position. But for example, they don't want the Reds don't want the Waratahs to have them. So let's use the Reds for example. They go out and buy, I don't know, let's just go and say Quade Cooper, just because that's the only name I can think of right now. They bring in Quade Cooper. They're not actually going to play him in the number 10. They're not even going to play him on the bench. But because they don't want the Waratahs to get an elusive talent like Quade Cooper, then obviously they're going to contract him just to prevent, right? And it's really poor. It's really poor. It is a smart tactic. It is an intelligent tactic, but it's very, very poor sportsmanship, and we don't want to see it because it obviously lacks the ability to grow the game in Australia. So what are your thoughts on all this, man? Obviously, it is pretty significant with Rugby Australia really stepping in significantly, and then I'll respond.
Okay, well, I think in regards of when the perfect time to do it was, it's probably, I guess, a lot later than a lot of people probably did expect, but with the momentum that the Wallabies are picking up as of late, with more people talking about them each and every week, I feel like it's a perfect time for them to be able to really bring in kind of that situation of being able to change what they have had in the past. Like I see also in my article about the fact of, with Brad Thorne being the Reds coach, the likes of an Isaac Rodder is a good example of pretty much ended up having to sign for the Western Force in the end, I believe it was, because of that rivalry between Thorne and Rodder. So if you've kind of got a little bit more of the backline of the staff and kind of everything like that, it'll be interesting to see who the sponsors are for these sides if they do decide to branch out as well. But I'm excited to see what they can do, because Super Rugby Pacific, it's only around about 5 months away, even less than that. So it does mean, is it going to be in place before that? We will have to wait and see. But
I think they're starting they're starting to implement it. They'll this is kind of just them saying that they're getting this ready, and because obviously we are 2 years away, less than 2 years away now from the Rugby World Cup. So it's basically them just saying we're going to really start to compete on a serious level again, because we haven't competed on it. And that's the crazy thing, because we still were in the World Cup final in 2015. I know we lost to New Zealand, but it wasn't crazily convincing. Like New Zealand were the better team and they won, but it wasn't like a whitewash. And we always compete. We even made the semi-final in 2011, despite the fact we've had so many issues and really, really bad issues for 20 years. But it's good to see Rugby Australia coming out here. Now, the only question mark I have here is that obviously Rugby Australia haven't known how to organise shit for ages. They're the reason we're in this mess. Like their processes and their thought processes are the reason we're in this mess, for their long handling of Australian rugby, right? But I'm intrigued to see, because this does look like a positive implementation of a few things that will sort the game out on a lot of levels. Because it does say here, after years of being stalled by bureaucracy and political factions, because obviously, the politics of Australian rugby has been just absolutely diabolical for the last 20 years. And that's been the biggest problem. That's why I still have my reservations when thinking about Rugby Australia organising this entire kind of sport for this country. But as you said, obviously we are starting to pick up some traction, and I'm starting to see a lot of people coming and posting about the Wallabies on social media, which, like, look, bandwagons are great. Like, it's all good to come and support. I want you to support the Wallabies here, but it's just so funny when people try and pretend like they were there throughout the tough, like, bullshit, like, straight up. Like, it's just, please just, if you're going to come and support the Wallabies, please support them because they're Australian. But don't tell me you were there when we were getting pumped by New Zealand 3 times. And like, don't tell me that you were supporting them then, because we didn't have anybody. And now we're having everybody saying, oh, wow, we're about to get around the Wallabies. No one cared about this sport for legitimately, probably, I'd say 15 years, 10 years, because obviously it still had traction until maybe the early 2010s. But no, I'm excited. I'm excited. As long as Australian rugby is looking at ways of improving from the past, I'll take it, mate. I'll barely take it, mate. All right? You hear me? You hear me? I'll take anything I get. All right? I'll take anything.